My name is James Monroe. I'm 44 years old, a retired staff sergeant who gave 20 years of his life to the United States Army. And the day I came home, everything I thought I had, my house, my savings, my family, was already gone. It was a warm Thursday morning when I pulled up to the house I'd been sending money home to for 2 decades. The porch was different, the paint was new, and there was a car I didn't recognize parked out front. I knocked, expecting to see my mom or maybe my little brother Kyle, but instead a stranger opened the door and told me to get off his property. I laughed at first, thinking it was a misunderstanding. Then I gave him my name. His face didn't change. He told me this was his house, showed me a deed with a signature that wasn't mine, and told me again to leave. When I pulled out my phone to call my parents, the number was disconnected. At the bank, the woman at the counter typed my name into her system and gave me a look I'll never forget. The accounts had been closed. There was no record of my name tied to anything. The money I'd sent home every deployment, every hazard zone bonus, it had disappeared just like my family did. I went to the police, thinking maybe there had been fraud. They looked at my ID, saw my uniform, and said they'd look into it. No one ever called back. I even drove to my parents' old address, but the house was for sale and empty. It was like someone had erased me from every part of their lives. I sat in my truck that night with my duffel bag beside me, the only thing left from 20 years of service, and stared at the empty house. My name was still carved into the tree in the front yard, but everything else had vanished. Even the people who once called me son. That's when I realized this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a clerical error or identity theft. My own family had cut me out on purpose. They didn't just move on, they deleted me. And if you're wondering how that's even possible, well, so was I, until I found out the truth. The real reason they threw me away like I never mattered. I wasn't supposed to join the Army. That was never the plan. I had a full-ride scholarship to a good university and dreams of becoming a mechanical engineer, maybe even running my own shop someday. Then my dad got sick. It started with fatigue, then came the hospital visits, then the bills. My mom tried to hold things together, but her job at the diner barely paid the mortgage. I was 18 when I sat down with my guidance counselor and told her I wouldn't be going to college after all. The Army recruiter had been calling for months. I said yes. Not because I was looking for glory, but because I needed to send money home. Every check I earned went straight to my mom's account. Rent, medicine, groceries. I figured I'd serve 4 years, maybe 6, and then go back to school. But life doesn't usually go the way you draw it out. Kyle was 10 when I left for boot camp. I remember hugging him goodbye on the porch while Dad sat inside with an oxygen tank. Kyle cried, said he didn't want me to go. I told him it was just temporary. I promised I'd always be around, even if he couldn't see me. My first deployment came fast. Iraq. Then later, Afghanistan. I learned how to shut off my fear, how to sleep through gunfire, and how to stay alive when people around me didn't. But through all that, I never missed a single month of support. Birthdays, Christmas, school fees, I covered what Mom couldn't. I didn't want Kyle to ever feel like he had to carry a burden. That was my job. When I came home on leave, it was always short. A few days here and there, I'd help mow the lawn, fix broken pipes, and eat my mom's pot roast. Then I'd pack my duffel and head back out. No fanfare, no medals, no welcome signs, just duty. I never complained. That's what being the oldest felt like to me. You carry the weight so others don't have to. I watched Kyle grow up from a distance. Mom would send photos, his baseball uniform, prom night, and high school graduation. I kept them in a small box I tucked into my gear. He was smart, confident, always had a way with people. He reminded me of the life I might have had if I hadn't chosen the path I did. But I never resented it. Not once. Every decision I made was out of love, for my parents, for Kyle, for the family I believed in. I thought, one day, when I retired, I'd come home and finally take a breath. Maybe open that garage I used to dream about. Maybe Kyle and I would work side by side. That hope kept me going through sandstorms, firefights, and lonely Christmas mornings in barracks halfway across the world. I believed, with everything I had, that my sacrifices meant something, that they saw me even from far away, that I still mattered to them. Turns out, I was wrong, but back then I didn't know that yet. I was just the son who kept giving, and giving, and giving. It happened while I was deployed in Kandahar. I'd just finished a 12-hour patrol and was sitting on the edge of my bunk, boots still on, when I saw the email from my mom. It was short, just a few lines. Kyle had bought a lottery ticket on a whim, and they'd won $12 million. Just like that. I smiled when I read it. I figured maybe it was a scam or one of those online pranks. But the next day, another message came through, this time from Kyle. It was real. He'd claimed the ticket, and the money was already in their account. I thought about Dad's hospital bills, about how Mom could finally stop working doubles, how Kyle could go to grad school without debt. For the first time in years, I let myself breathe. Weeks passed, and their messages grew fewer. No calls, no updates. At first, I chalked it up to the excitement. I imagined them traveling, maybe fixing up the house. I told myself they deserved it. I told myself I'd hear from them soon. Then my transfer papers got delayed, and I had a few extra days to use the satellite phone. I tried calling home. The line rang, then cut. I tried again the next day, same result. A few days later, my mom's email bounced back as undeliverable. Kyle's inbox was full. It felt off, but I didn't want to panic. When I finally reached a buddy back home, he told me the house had been listed for sale and then sold fast. The family was gone. No forwarding address, no goodbye, just gone. I didn't know it then, but Kyle had taken full control. He convinced Mom and Dad that since I was a career military, I didn't need anything. He told them the government would take care of me, that I had my benefits, my pension, that I was set for life. Meanwhile, he was the one who stayed. He was the one who deserved a fresh start. And they believed him. He rewrote the narrative I had built with sweat and sacrifice. Suddenly, I was the distant one, the ghost who sent money but never showed up, the son who left, the one they could live without. I found out later that my name had been removed from all family documents. The will, the house deed. Even the emergency contacts I'd listed in the Army database were changed. It was like I never existed, like I had died over there, in some desert, and they had already buried me. The worst part wasn't the money. It wasn't losing the house or the savings I'd sent home. It was the silence, the way they disappeared without explanation, the way they let me keep hoping, month after month, that it was just some mix-up or mistake, that maybe I'd walk back through the door one day and everything would be fine. But it wasn't fine, and deep down, I think I knew that the second those emails stopped coming. Still, nothing could have prepared me for what I'd face when I finally made it back. Because betrayal doesn't always come with a knife. Sometimes, it comes with a winning ticket and a quiet goodbye. The day I came home, I expected something quiet. Maybe Mom is in the kitchen. Maybe Kyle is mowing the lawn, or Dad is sitting out on the porch with his oxygen tank. What I found instead was a stranger opening the front door and asking what I wanted. The house looked different. Fresh paint, new porch lights, unfamiliar cars in the driveway. I gave the man my name and told him I'd just returned from deployment. He stared at me like I was trying to scam him, then told me to leave. I stepped back onto the sidewalk, stunned. I looked at the windows, the trees, and the old swing set in the backyard that Kyle used to fall off. I remembered fixing the garage door last time I was home. Now it wasn't ours. At the bank, it got worse. I walked in wearing my uniform, handed them my ID, and asked to access my account. The woman at the counter typed for a while, then gave me a nervous look and said the account was closed. There was no balance, no history, no access. I checked the second account, the one I used for bills. Same result. Gone. All of it. Every cent I had sent home over the years, every bit of savings I thought was sitting there waiting for me after retirement. Vanished. At the DMV, they said my mailing address was out of state. The phone number tied to my license wasn't mine. My name came up clean but empty, like a profile that had been erased piece by piece. I drove to the local VA office and waited 2 hours just to ask if my emergency contacts were still listed as my parents. The clerk pulled up the file and frowned. The names had been changed. No one by my last name remained on record. I sat in my truck that night, parked in a Walmart lot with everything I owned in the back seat. I had no key, no home, no place to go. I was a soldier who served 20 years, and somehow I had become a man no one wanted to claim. I reached out to an old friend from high school who still lived in town. He worked in real estate and had access to public records. I didn't tell him everything at first, just that I needed to understand what had happened to my parents' house. A week later, he called me back, sounding uncomfortable. The deed had been transferred a year earlier, not long after my last deployment. The signature on the sale paperwork matched my mother's, and the sale listed no mention of me. But what broke me was the note on the estate file that said the previous owner's eldest son had been declared missing in action. I stared at the email for hours. My own family had filed me as gone, not dead, just missing, conveniently gone. It was enough to justify transferring assets, closing accounts, and removing my name from every part of their lives. They knew I was still alive. I had written, I had called. But they needed me gone on paper so they could keep everything. I drove 6 hours to the address my friend found listed under Kyle's name. It was a gated community, big house, new cars in the driveway. He opened the door and just stood there. No hug, no welcome, just a blank face and the words I never expected to hear. You shouldn't be here. My mom came down the hall next. She looked older but not surprised. She didn't cry. She didn't even smile. She said I had no right to just show up after all this time, that I had made my choices. Then she stepped back, and Kyle closed the door in my face. I didn't leave. I called out their names, banged on the door. I told them I had nowhere else. A few minutes later, the police arrived. Kyle must have called them the second he saw me. The officer pulled me aside, asked me to leave quietly, told me this wasn't the place to settle family problems. As I walked away, I wasn't angry. Not really, I was just hollow. I had spent my whole life trying to be the kind of son they could be proud of. And when they had everything they ever wanted, they buried me without a second thought. It had been 5 years since I last saw their faces. 5 quiet, steady years spent working in a small auto repair shop on the edge of town. I didn't talk about the past. I didn't explain why I lived alone in a trailer behind the shop. I just worked, paid my bills, and learned how to sleep without waiting for something to explode. One afternoon, I was replacing a radiator when I heard the doorbell on the front counter chime. I wiped the grease off my hands and walked in, and there they were, Kyle, my mother, and behind them, in a wheelchair, my father. They looked nothing like the people I remembered. Kyle had gained weight, worn the kind of suit you wear when trying to look important but can't afford to be. Mom looked tired, her clothes clean but faded. Dad just stared at the floor, his mouth slightly open, jaw trembling. Kyle did the talking. He said they'd lost everything. The market crashed. The business deals fell through. He had debts. Dad's medical bills were piling up. Mom's health was declining. They needed help. He said my name like it still meant something, like it hadn't been erased. I didn't say much at first, just nodded and told them to wait outside. I went back into the garage and sat in the break room for 10 minutes. My heart wasn't racing. I didn't feel rage. I just felt tired. When I came back, I told Kyle I'd covered Dad's treatments. I gave him a number for a private care home I knew that took veterans and their families. I said I'd already paid the deposit. For Mom, I arranged a place near the coast where she could have peace and meals and the kind of care she used to give others. Kyle asked why I was doing this. Said I didn't have to. He looked like he couldn't understand it. I told him the truth. Because you're still my family. Because I won't let people suffer if I can help it. But I'm not coming to visit. There won't be birthdays or holidays or photos. That part of me doesn't exist anymore. He opened his mouth to argue, to beg, but I stopped him. I forgive you. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. He didn't say another word. He just nodded slowly and pushed Dad's chair back toward the car. Mom glanced at me once over her shoulder. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. I didn't either. They left, and I went back inside. I picked up a wrench and got back under the hood. The same engine, the same bolts, just a man doing his job. The past hadn't gone anywhere. But for once, it didn't own me. The Army taught me about loyalty, about showing up even when no one sees it, about putting your name on something and standing behind it no matter what it costs you. It taught me how to lead without shouting, how to protect people who might never thank you, and how to keep your word when it's the only thing you've got left. I carried those lessons home with me. I thought they would be enough to hold a family together. But family doesn't run on discipline. It runs on choice. And mine chose a version of life that didn't include me. They chose comfort over conscience, money over memory, silence over truth. For a long time, I let that make me bitter. I replayed everything, wondered what I missed, what I could have done differently. But then I remembered something a sergeant once told me overseas. You don't control what people take from you. You only control what you give. So I gave them peace. I gave them care when they had none. I gave them a quiet exit from the wreckage they built for themselves, not because they earned it, but because I refused to let them change the kind of man I am. That's the real legacy of my service. Not the medals, not the scars, but the choice to keep doing the right thing, even when no one's watching, even when no one claps. I live alone now. I don't need much. I fix engines, I eat dinner in silence, and some nights I still dream about desert sand under my boots. But I sleep easily, not because I've forgotten, but because I've forgiven. And in this life, that's its own kind of freedom.